Hello, everybody. We've covered some amazing realism literature so far in English 232. So now it's time to process what we've learned on a deeper level. We'll be doing this by writing an essay that analyzes one or more of our short stories. This section will prepare students to write the essay. You'll consider the topics, complete a lesson about writing essays about literature, and that's just to refresh your essay writing skills, and complete a brainstorming exercise to generate some ideas for the topic. The actual essay is not due in this section, okay? It will be due in the next section. In this section, we're just preparing, okay? Another video will explain more about the brainstorming exercise, so be sure to check that one out as well. For the remainder of this video, though, I want to discuss the essay topics themselves. So let me pull those up. Okay, you have a variety of topics to choose from. The first one is to compare and contrast Mark Twain's The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County and The War Prayer, considering elements such as characteristics of realism, theme, irony, characters, conflicts, and/or the moral of the story. Mark Twain is the only author that we read more than one story by, so it just makes sense to take the two stories that we read of Twain and compare and contrast them. Now, they obviously have some clear differences. Celebrated Jumping Frog has a very humorous tone. War Prayer, not so much. So they're quite different stories, but they do also have some clear elements that are similarities as well. So that's the first topic. The next topic is to choose one story, any story that you wish, and discuss how it exhibits the elements of realism, regionalism, or naturalism. So what I recommend for this one is first decide which story you want to write about, okay? And then consider whether that story you would classify it as just in general a realism type of story, or is it more specific? Could you drill down into regionalism, which is local color, or even naturalism? Is it that super pessimistic version of realism that we call naturalism? So to identify which of those movements that your story best exhibits, I would recommend going back to the realism video PowerPoint at the beginning of the semester, because that will give you some characteristics of each of those and help you to identify that. The next topic is to write a character analysis of any one character from the short stories that we have read. There is a link there that gives some tips about how to write a character analysis. So I'm not going to say anything more about that one right now. If you're interested in writing a character analysis, be sure to check that next video that discusses the brainstorming exercise, because we'll go through that in a little more detail. The next one deals with Sarah Orne Jewett's The White Heron. So the editors of one textbook note that Jewett's stories are deep and profound with symbolic richness and mythic power. Discuss the symbolic richness of The White Heron, identifying and explaining symbols and deeper meanings present in the story when readers look beyond the slight or thin plot line. Okay, so for that story, you can identify any symbols that you want to discuss. There are some listed in the PowerPoint for the White Heron, so you may want to check that out, but you're not limited to any that are listed there. You can do any symbols that you want to in the story. The main challenge with writing an essay about symbolism is you want to choose symbols to discuss that that add to a certain impression of the story, because you want to be able to say, well, if you examine the symbolism and these particular symbols in particular in the story, then you have a deeper understanding of this. So if you want to do the symbolism one, writing about symbols, frankly, is a lot of fun. I enjoy doing that. But the main challenge with writing an essay about symbolism is deciding what's significant about these symbols, okay? The next two have to do with Charlotte Perkins Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper. So the first one is to examine that story from a feminist perspective. In particular, examine what Gilman seems to convey about the feminine condition through the narration of this one woman and her descent into madness. And when we're looking at things from a feminist perspective, we're looking at what the story reveals about the feminine condition, in particular in that time period. So you may want to examine the narrator's relationship with her husband. What are the power dynamics in her marriage? What are the power dynamics in terms of her situation as a patient in the medical community, or in the mental health community? How is she viewed by her male doctors? Let's see, you could also examine just her general interactions with other people, the way that she herself seems to second guess her gut instincts, and she's trying to trust to the authority figures, but sometimes she finds that hard to do. So you might look at that aspect from a feminist perspective as well. So lots that you could discuss for that particular one. The last one is to another comparison contrast topic, and it's to watch the film version of Charlotte Perkins Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper. The URL is there. It is also linked on our main Moodle page. It's kind of a long video, okay? The film is almost 2 hours long, but it's really fascinating. So if you're more of a visual learner, it may be worth it to you to watch the film version of that story and to do a comparison contrast between the short story and the film. Now, if you decide to do that one and watch that film, you do need a library card number in order to access that film because it's from one of our library databases. If you don't have a library card number, or if you just don't have yours handy, there is a guest access number there that you can use. Okay, so those are the topics. Hopefully you spot one there that you find interesting. Let's talk about the general guidelines. So use standard MLA essay format. This is your third English by now, so hopefully everybody is familiar with MLA essay guidelines. But if you aren't, there is an example on our main Moodle site as well. You do need to include a works cited. So you'll list the story or stories, if you do one of the comparison contrast ones, that your essay examines, as well as any outside works that you consult, but outside research is not included. You don't have to do outside research. Now, if you do incorporate information from outside sources, though, do cite it. Do cite it properly in your paper with in-text citations as well as on the works cited page. Be sure that you back up your statements with evidence in the form of quotations and paraphrases from the text. In general, try to aim to use at least one quotation or paraphrase per body paragraph. And with a literary analysis essay, you tend to lean more on quotations than you do on paraphrases. So be sure that you are illustrating what you're saying with relevant quotations from the text. Use in-text citations to document those quotations and paraphrases. And the essay should have a minimum of 5 paragraphs. So you need to have an introduction with a hook, background information, and thesis. You need to have at least 3 body paragraphs that develop the topic in detail, and you need to have a conclusion. Okay. The grading criteria is also listed here. Content is worth 50 points, and I divide that up by 10 points for the introduction, 30 points for body paragraphs, and 10 points for the conclusion. 10 points go toward the use of text as evidence. So in other words, your use of quotations and paraphrases throughout the essay to back up your statements. And then 20 points goes toward conventions. That's things like paper format, proofreading, that sort of thing. Okay, so hopefully you spot a topic that will be interesting to you and that you're excited to write about. Be sure to check out the next video on the brainstorming exercise for this week.